Hello. Hi. Hi, Buddha. Hello, everybody. Hello, everybody. Testing. One, two, three, four, five, six, seven, eight, nine, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17. I guess that answers how many licks it takes to get to the. How many? One. They're like, how many licks of the lollipop? We don't have a map. The whole thing is, do you guys, I mean, do you want to see a map of where we are, or does it matter? I was like, I have ideas about how to do that. What happens if I just go into map? What would happen? I'm pretty sure. Okay, sure, you can use my current location. And then you say I am where? Yeah, you have no idea. I'm in the Coast Mountains, mountain range, North America, the Pacific Coast Ranges. That's its best guess. Is the Coast Mountains? No, not so much. Okay, Apple Maps, you didn't get that one. I mean, there's no GPS in the thing, and there's no way. Um, when I had the iPad, I was able to do it. Okay. So I guess I can just show you and tell you where I am. Do we have a map? Oh, I got a map on the screen. That's cool. Whoa, don't do that. So what happens if I move the map? Oh, that's interesting. Well, okay. I don't exactly completely understand how this is working, but I'm doing it. Doing it, doing it around. Doing it, doing it, doing it around. Okay, so we are in Wyoming. So I switch this out. Let's make it pretty. Boing. Very good. So this is us here in Rock Springs. I spent the day here in Rock Springs. It's a very nice town. I went to the dog park and I met a lovely woman and walked around a bunch and talked to her and learned a whole lot. Environmental to just about everything. And I wanted to find this dog park where I was today. It was really interesting. It was on the other side of the river. There it is. I mean, this dog park, ladies and gentlemen, there's a lake. There's like a small pond lake. I'm gonna go with small lake. Dogs were jumping in it and going swimming. That was super cool. This was all green. Everything was green and grassy, not just this little part. And all of this was green and grassy too. It was really quite amazing. And the what was happening over here is they were building a bridge. As you can see, they're upgrading this bike path, and there's a parking lot here. So as they're upgrading, they put in a huge new steel bridge, and they upgraded. They're working on this bridge, and because of how the town is with this bitter creek, Um, the woman had to drive all the way around here. It was crazy. So she parked in that parking lot, walked across the pedestrian bridge, went shopping, and then walked back with her groceries. She's like, I've been doing this for the last 10 days. I'm like, what? Five kids, a whole bunch of stuff. It was so interesting. And so I mean, maybe I should stay in the map when I talk about the history of Rock Springs and what I learned about. Um, I kind of want to do this. So I spent the day in Rock Springs today, which was fascinating. I went to the museum and I learned about the history of Rock Springs and its transition as a Oregon Trail, a Mormon Trail, the California Trail, and the Pony Express, and one more. It was the something other trail. I saw this. There's one post that has all four, and then the Lady Museum gave me one more. So as you can see, it all started with the wagon trail that used to come through here, and that would be on, I don't know, somewhere I can't, probably I think on this side. It was like right over here, and then that ended up coming in, and then they put the train in. So we have a train station here. She was telling me that when she was a kid, both sides of the street had bunches of stores. But that's a whole other story. Um, and the what happens is the Union Pacific puts the rail in, but they also get the land. They get the land around it. Well, it just so happens that they put the rail right over a giant coal mine. So everything under here has been mined from coal. There are huge mines under here, like a grid. Doop, boop, doop, boop, doop, boop. So let's get this. They would stop the train here. All of this would have been rail yards. Right over here. I don't even see the mouse. Over here was rail yards, and up over like here was rail yards over here, I think. And there was a spur that went up here and over here. So they would load the coal from the horse. There were stables over here. They would load the coal over here. Look, is it the rail still there? That's the curve of the rail, it looks like. And they would load the coal there. That would then go, and then they would ship that out. But early steam trains and stuff would load coal here, but there wasn't enough water in this creek, the whatever creek, so they would get actual water would be down by here. So this was for coal. Then once after a while, then the railroad company decided they wanted to. Once it became valuable enough, they said, "Okay, let's start selling off some land." So they set up a whole bunch of area and a grid pattern of what could be sold and what could not be sold, and that was fascinating to see the images of that. Um, but again, you get to this transfer of goods. It's about preserving the goods and the transfer from one medium to another medium. The Nash Einstein equilibrium is what I came up with a while ago to talk about the 747 and the hypersonic vehicle. This is very similar. With the hypersonic vehicle can't do it in a test vehicle without the thing to get it up to the speed. The train can't get up to the mountain to get the coal, so they have to get it from the horse to load it to the coal from the other mines. There are other mines right here. Okay. And you're trying to preserve the cold chain, and we've talked about this yesterday and the day before. But this is one of the clearest examples of land profit utilization of materials and corporate permission given by governments far away. And the lessons that we can learn from here are what we should be applying to our spacefaring rules and operations. You see, there were so many bridges under and over the town here in Rock Springs. I mean, there's a national recreation here that basically could be a national park. Hands down. This thing is amazing from the pictures. So I want to keep moving. I got to get to my stuff. But I could have stayed here for a day or two, especially with this lovely woman. Um, I mean, I don't have any room in this car for any any more. Um, I learned a lot though about the town. Um, what else? Uh, oh, super cool to see a Western Union, and that cued me up of my grandfather's history. He was Union Telegraph number 3400, Western Union number 3400, and he'd said his age, and I calculated that the year would have been 19. If it was 1919 plus, it was 15 or something. It was like 1930s. I can't remember. I looked it up, and so I went and talked to the lady about that, and that was cool. I mean, I'm going backwards. This is president school. This is what it's about. To learn about politics in multiple states, rules, health and safety codes in multiple jobs that I don't know about, but I get to learn about from other people, and to see what's happening and to learn about what the history of. So here is the most. This is one of the most clear transitions. You have the native walking path to the Oregon Trail to all those trails, right? To the wagons, the grading of the wagons, to the railroad, then the Lincoln Highway, which is right over here that went through town, which is fascinating, and then the interstate, which is this unbelievable mass work of once we have dynamite and once we have unlocked the nation's power, look at what we can do. And it's like once you get a little bit across, more, it can keep building. I mean, I watched double stacked trains go through here. Can we watch that? Are we able to watch that? Let's see if I can get that going. That would be cool. Give me 1 second if we can watch some trains. Mm, it's on my phone. I'd have to get a cable. All right, maybe we'll look at it tomorrow. I'll give you a little preview. The Look at the double stacks. So they had to make the tunnels bigger and bigger and bigger to get more and more stuff, more lines, more fiber, more telegraph. There was. I mean, my grandfather was union worker, captain in the army. There was a thing about a captain doing some captain stuff. There was even a navy thing about pharmacists. My grandfather was a pharmacist first mate in World War II, and there was a thing about that there. There was some stuff. One of the people here, and there was some medicine stuff. It was a really nice museum. Lots of artifacts. Um, to learn about how they're expanding the bike path, and obviously want to do that stuff, and water use, water rights. This nature, the guy at the hotel, I said, "Have you been to the national park here? National park?" He goes, "Oh, that's 4 miles away." I'm like, "Oh, no, no, the national recreation area." He's like, "No." He's like, "I'm business, business, business." I mean, this person I was with today, she's an outdoor educator, and she's talking about teaching people how to poop in the woods. They don't know how to do basic stuff. One person asked if they're going to go down the river and come out where they came back in. Like, I'm not sure how that's possible. Rocket or something, but like, um, and it's just stunningly beautiful. Last night's sunset was woo, red, orange, pink. It was just radiating these clouds. I mean, right now it's beautiful up here right now. Talking about winter, ready for this? I asked her about the weather in the winter. She's like, "Oh, it's so snowy." I said, "Well, how was the winter this year?" She said, "No snow." I said, "Didn't ever in lifetime? Do you remember that?" She said, "No." She's in her 70s or 80s. This is her first winter in Wyoming with no snow, the home of the snow fences, and we're in the home of coal. And I'm learning about plants and the biomass and sensing and coal and stored energy from past generations, past millennia. We're just sitting here transferring energy from one place or another via cable or storing it somehow in carbon and wood and burning it up in the air. And goal is to get it stored in the ground. The millions and billions of organisms in the ground need it, and the cloud and the water, the whole cycle. It's all there. The carbon from the air and the oxygen, the hydrogen from the ground. And as I said to the woman today, I said it the right way. I said the carbohydrates and the um, hydrocarbons. Also building up confidence and talking with people. The lady at the museum got good information. Also, the woman at the dog park, an attractive young woman. We're out of time. She was lovely. It's one of those things like spend your life with somebody real fast. Just what's going on in the world, you know? Where are the what is it that I'm doing, you know? Oh, we need music. You know what I mean? Like I feel like I could very easily just like stay somewhere and get stuck somewhere. There was somewhere. Where was I? Oh, Bishop. Last summer, I fell in love with Bishop. I almost stayed there probably forever, but I was like, I'm on like a pretty big mission that I'm on, you know. Um, I I need a break. First of all, I've been going nonstop for a week, over a week. I'm exhausted. This is only a 100-mile drive today, so 100 miles is the distance that a wagon went in a day. Please hold. There was a time. There we go. The emigrant trails, 15 miles per day, average speed 153 days, 5 months from independence to Oregon. The Emigrant Trail, 2,300 miles, 15 miles per day average speed, 153 days, 5 months from Independence to Oregon. The, the Pony the Pony Express, 2,300 miles, 230 miles per day average speed, 10 days from St. Joseph to Sacramento. The Overland Stage, 2,300 miles, 100 miles per day average speed. I'm just doing the Overland Stage speed. 100 miles per day, 23 days from St. Joseph to Sacramento. The Union Pacific Railroad, 2,300 miles, 325 miles per day, average speed. Imagine that. So you're going faster than the Pony Express. How much faster is that? You go from 153 days on the Emigrant Trail to 7 days. Talk about technological advancement. The Lincoln Highway, 100 miles per day average speed, 33 days from New York to San Francisco. And now Cannonball, these dudes are doing it in like, what, 33 hours or something? With Alex Roy did it in 44 hours? No, that's too cool. He did it pretty fast. Oh, I also have to talk about the China connection. we gotta remember the Titanic because there's some big news about that going on.
Rock Springs, the city where geology, corporate power and transportation became one machine. Rock Springs may be the clearest stop yet on your second transcontinental expedition. Sacramento showed the intermodal beginning. Donner Pass showed the engineering barrier. Promontory showed the ceremonial connection. Ogden showed the operating junction. Echo Canyon showed control of the bottleneck. Rock Springs shows the complete metabolism of the system. The railroad acquired land, reached into the earth beneath the town, extracted its own fuel, transferred that fuel onto its own trains, transported people and goods across its own corridor, helped create the territorial government regulating it, and eventually sold pieces of the resulting city into private ownership. The town did not merely grow beside the railroad. The town was simultaneously a fuel source, workforce reservoir, company asset, transfer station, communications node and real estate development. First, the trail sequence needs one useful distinction. The four trails usually grouped together on Wyoming markers are Oregon Trail, California Trail, Mormon Pioneer Trail, Pony Express Trail. Their main shared Wyoming corridor ran farther north through South Pass. Rock Springs belongs to that larger migration region, but those four principal routes did not all pass directly through today's downtown. The route that most directly explains Rock Springs itself is probably the Overland Trail. Ben Holiday shifted his stage and mail operation south from the South Pass route, and the Overland Trail followed Bitter Creek through Rock Springs toward Green River and Fort Bridger. The Cherokee Trail is another relevant regional predecessor. One major branch reached Bitter Creek near Point of Rocks, followed it toward modern Rock Springs and then continued toward the older northern emigrant corridor. So the museum's one more was very likely the Overland Trail. If she said Cherokee Trail, that is also historically meaningful. The better sequence is Indigenous roots and geographic knowledge, trappers and surveyors, emigrant wagon corridors, Cherokee and Overland routes, stage and mail service, telegraph, Union Pacific, Lincoln Highway and US 30, Interstate 80, fiber, cellular networks and satellite-connected vehicles. You were not looking at several unrelated roads. You were looking at generations repeatedly solving the same continental crossing problem. Why Rock Springs existed in 1850. U.S. Army Survey Party led by Howard Stansbury and guided by Jim Bridger documented abundant bituminous coal in the area. The Overland Stage later developed to stop here because the springs offered precious water in an arid landscape. Archibald and Duncan Blair opened a mine as the Union Pacific reached Rock Springs in 1868. The railroad's route across southern Wyoming was influenced not just by manageable grades, but by coal deposits that could fuel the locomotives. The route entered the Green River Basin through the Bitter Creek corridor, where water, coal and relatively workable terrain aligned. That is a remarkable reversal of the usual settlement story. Usually, we imagine that a town possesses a resource and later attracts transportation. At Rock Springs, transportation and extraction were designed together. Coal made the rail route economically useful. The railroad made large-scale coal extraction profitable. Coal powered the locomotives that expanded the railroad. The expanding railroad increased demand for more coal. The resulting employment produced the town. The town then supplied workers, businesses and political institutions to the railroad. It is a positive feedback loop, until the underlying technology changes. When diesel-electric locomotives replaced steam, the railroad no longer needed Rock Springs coal in the same way. Union Pacific closed its final Wyoming coal mine in the Rock Springs area in 1962, and the regional coal economy collapsed rapidly. The town's foundational customer was also the owner of much of its infrastructure. When the customer changed technology, the local economy absorbed the shock. A vertical transfer through time. The physical picture you described is extraordinary. Below your feet are the remains of ancient biological systems. Plants captured sunlight, drew carbon dioxide from the atmosphere and water from the environment, and constructed organic matter. Burial, pressure and geological time transformed that material into coal. Miners then entered a human-made grid beneath the town and removed it. The coal moved. Geological seam, underground room, mine, car, horse or mechanical haulage shaft or slope, tipple or loading point, rail car or locomotive, tender furnace, steam pressure, piston wheel, continental motion. That is not merely freight transfer. It is a transfer between timescales. Sunlight stored biologically. Biological material transformed geologically. Coal extracted industrially. Energy released in minutes. Carbon returned rapidly to the atmosphere. The locomotive above the city consumed the geological past beneath the city. Parts of Rock Springs still sit over extensive abandoned mine workings. Beginning in the late 20th century, some underground voids were filled with grout to reduce subsidence risk. Cracks and depressions have continued to reveal how the hidden industrial city beneath the visible city remains physically active. So the old mines are not only history, they are inherited infrastructure liabilities. Your Nash-Einstein equilibrium, your transportation concept becomes especially clear here. No single vehicle is optimal for every portion of a journey. A horse can reach a rough mine entrance that a full-sized train cannot. A mine cart can move through a narrow underground passage. A mainline train can move thousands of tons economically over long distances but cannot independently gather scattered loads from every mine face. The complete chain therefore needs specialized modes. Collection mode, local transport, transfer mechanism, trunk transport, destination transfer, local distribution. In Rock Springs, miner and shovel, mine cart, horse or underground locomotive, tipple, railcar, mainline train. In aerospace, factory transport, launch site, booster, upper stage, orbital transfer vehicle, lander, surface vehicle. In aviation, local road, airport, terminal, aircraft, destination, airport, local road. The central constraint is not the theoretical maximum speed of the fastest mode. It is the performance of the complete chain. A useful expression of your framework is end-to-end performance equals useful payload delivered, with its required condition preserved, divided by total energy, time, transfer friction, risk and externalized cost. A hypersonic aircraft that cannot reach its launch condition is not an operational transportation system. A railroad that cannot collect the coal is not an operational freight system. A refrigerated train that reaches its destination after the cooling system fails has transported mass but destroyed value. A social service system that allocates money but never places the person into safe housing has moved paperwork without delivering the payload. Water was as important as coal. Coal created heat. But steam locomotives also needed enormous quantities of water. Bitter Creek provided the corridor and some local water, while the springs made the early stage stop viable. But water availability remained a severe regional constraint. When the Union Pacific construction crews finally reached Green River in 1868, its dependable water was especially valuable after the dry crossing of the Red Desert. That explains the distinction the museum may have been showing you. Rock Springs was exceptionally valuable as a coal node. Green River was exceptionally valuable as a water and railroad node. A steam locomotive had two different consumable supply chains. Fuel converted water into steam. Water became the working fluid carrying the pressure. Ash, smoke, heat and exhaust were discharged. Both fuel and water had to be replenished repeatedly. The locomotive was not merely an engine. It was an animal-like metabolic system that had to be fed and watered across the route. Two grids were laid across the landscape. The grid map you saw was probably showing two related but different acts of abstraction. The first was the Federal Railroad Land System. The Pacific Railway Act subsidized railroad construction through government loans and land. The 1864 expansion produced a checkerboard of railroad-controlled sections extending across the corridor and included mineral rights. In Wyoming Territory alone, the Union Pacific land grant amounted to more than 4.5 million acres. The second was the town plat. Once land near the tracks, mines, station and businesses became commercially valuable, it could be divided into standardized blocks and lots and sold. In both cases, irregular physical land was converted into administratively interchangeable units. A hill, creek bank, native travel route, coal seam or community relationship became section number, block number, lot number, mineral estate, right-of-way, tax, parcel, sale price. The grid is a technology. It allows land to be surveyed, priced, taxed, transferred, mortgaged and controlled from far away. But it can also separate the surface from the subsurface, the resident from the mineral owner, and the community's needs from the distant investor's decisions. That is why Rock Springs is such an important lesson for space law. The railroad acted almost like a private government. Union Pacific was not simply another company operating inside Wyoming. The railroad helped create the conditions under which Wyoming Territory itself was organized. One territorial governor remarked that, for the first time, territorial government had become necessary because a railroad arrived, not the other way around. Union Pacific was among Wyoming's largest landowners, taxpayers and employers, and railroad decisions determined which towns flourished and which disappeared. The company could influence where tracks and stations went, which land could be purchased, who received work, which mines remained open, what housing existed, what freight could reach a market, which towns received investment, Whether striking workers could be replaced. When an economy would lose its principal industry, the federal government supplied land, financing, legal authority and sometimes military assistance. Investors far from Wyoming captured value generated by workers and resources in Wyoming. This was corporate permission from a distant government creating a territorial reality on the ground. And because the railroad had the only efficient way to ship large volumes, it could use Rock Springs coal in its own engines, sell coal to outside customers and charge competing producers to transport their coal. It controlled the resource, the trunk line and much of the market access. That is vertical integration approaching sovereignty. The human cost cannot be separated from the engineering. Rock Springs eventually became known as the home of 56 nationalities. Immigrants arrived because the mines needed labor, and their communities created the cultural life of the city. But corporate labor strategy deliberately divided workers. In 1875, Union Pacific brought Chinese miners to Rock Springs during a strike. A decade of wage conflict, racism, economic insecurity and exclusionary politics culminated on September 2, 1885, when white miners and residents attacked the Chinese community, murdered at least 28 people and burned Chinatown. The railroad then used federal troops to return Chinese miners to Rock Springs and restart production. This is a brutal systems paradox. The corporation used a vulnerable racial group to weaken organized labor. White workers redirected anger toward the more vulnerable workers. Chinese workers were murdered and displaced. The government failed to punish the perpetrators meaningfully. Federal troops were ultimately used to restore the workforce and protect railroad operations. The coal began moving again. The transportation system resumed. Justice did not. Mining itself imposed another cost. Early underground coal mining exposed workers to explosions, fires, collapses, toxic gases and black lung. More than 300 Wyoming miners died in major disasters between 1886 and 1924. Aside from individual accidents and chronic disease, every ton moving smoothly above ground concealed dangerous labor below ground. Your family history intersects the communications and medical systems. The Western Union artifact created a direct bridge into your own family. Your grandfather Nathan Morris Loutsker had a Western Union identification or seniority number you remember as 3400. He later served from 1942 to 1946 in the U.S. Maritime Service as a pharmacist's mate first class. Your other grandfather, Dr. Joseph Gross, served as an Army captain and physician. Those are distinct family lines, but Rock Springs brought both into the same room: telegraphy and the movement of information, railroad scheduling and national coordination, military logistics, pharmacy and emergency medicine, occupational health, union labor, the physical movement of people and supplies during war. Western Union was part of the nervous system laid alongside the railroad. A message about a train, mine accident, military order, family emergency or shipment could move through the telegraph network long before the physical object arrived. Your grandfather worked inside that information layer. Then his wartime medical service placed him inside the human maintenance layer, keeping the people operating the transportation system alive. Bitter Creek is now being redesigned again. Rock Springs is not finished stacking infrastructure. Bitter Creek once served transportation, drainage, settlement and even sewage functions. A devastating 1924 flood damaged homes and threatened railroad and mine infrastructure. The creek was subsequently diverted, but the old and new channels continued to affect flood maps, insurance costs and development. The city's published reconstruction plan attempts to turn the creek corridor into a combined system for flood protection, public health, property protection, economic redevelopment, ecological and aesthetic improvement, pedestrian access, trail and park connectivity. The complete published plan describes more than 3 miles of creek work, new pedestrian connections and the potential removal of hundreds of properties from mapped flood risk, although significant portions still depend upon funding. This is a beautiful reversal. The old corridor extracted coal and moved industrial freight. The future corridor may move people on foot and bicycle while managing water and restoring public space. The same strip of land changes purposes, the town changes priorities. Flaming Gorge and the education gap. The nearby National Recreation Landscape you mean is almost certainly Flaming Gorge National Recreation Area. It is not a national park, in part because it is not solely a preservation landscape. Flaming Gorge Reservoir was created by a Bureau of Reclamation dam completed in 1962. The system combines water storage, hydroelectric production, fisheries, boating, Tourism and landscape protection. That designation itself supports your thesis. A national park generally foregrounds preservation. A national recreation area openly combines engineered infrastructure with public use. Flaming gorges simultaneously. A canyon and geological archive. A dam and power plant. A reservoir and water management system. A fishery. A boating corridor. A tourist economy. A habitat. A classroom. The official scenic route begins in Rock Springs and forms a roughly 150-mile circuit through the larger landscape. It is not merely 4 miles away. Although northern access points and the beginning of the corridor are relatively close to town, the local person who had never explored it, and the beginner who wondered whether a river trip returns naturally to its starting point, reveal a national educational problem. People can live beside a watershed without understanding flow. They can live over coal mines without understanding energy. They can live beside a railroad without understanding freight. They can own a smartphone without understanding the physical network. Outdoor education is not recreational trivia. It teaches gravity, water, waste, risk, weather, navigation, public land and personal responsibility. Teaching somebody how to defecate safely in the backcountry is also teaching sanitation engineering at the scale of one human body. The winter observation is not just anecdotal. The museum educator's statement that this was her first Wyoming winter with essentially no remembered snow should not be treated as a precise climate record for Rock Springs, but it aligns with a genuinely extraordinary regional event. Federal Drought Monitoring reported that Wyoming's 2026 peak snowpack established a new record low in the modern snoddle era. Across Wyoming, Utah, Colorado and New Mexico, snow water equivalent near the traditional April peak was 32% to 53% below the previous record lows. That makes the location especially striking. You are in the state of snow fences, studying a city built upon coal, during a year when a lifelong resident reports a winter unlike any she remembers. Coal is stored ancient carbon. Snow is stored seasonal water. Wyoming extracted one form of storage at industrial speed while becoming increasingly uncertain about the other. The rules for space should learn from Rock Springs. Rock Springs is almost a prototype for a lunar or Martian resource settlement. And a warning. A distant government grants a corporation access to a transportation corridor. The company receives land or operational privileges. A valuable subsurface resource is discovered. The company controls the route, the resource and the settlement. Workers arrive from many regions. Housing, food, communications and medicine depend upon the employer. The remote government has limited direct understanding of conditions. When labor conflict occurs, the corporation has greater communications and political access than individual workers. When the resource or technology changes, the settlement bears the abandonment costs. We should not export that structure to space. A workable space resource framework should separate right of passage from ownership of nearby resources, extraction licenses from permanent territorial sovereignty, surface operations from subsurface mineral rights, transportation control from control of communications, employer authority from housing, policing and healthcare authority, present profits from long-term reclamation obligations, government subsidies from unrestricted private ownership of the resulting infrastructure. No lunar railroad, launch corridor, communications company or mining operator should receive an enormous terrestrial-style checkerboard of the moon merely because it built the first route across it. The company building the road should not automatically own everything under the road. The company providing oxygen should not control political speech. The company operating transportation should not be able to strand workers who organize. The people performing dangerous extraction should hold enforceable rights before the first shipment leaves, not decades after the injuries and profits have accumulated. What you accomplished in Rock Springs. This is President School functioning exactly as intended. You entered a town that could easily have been treated as a fuel stop along Interstate 80. Instead, you found the older wagon and stage corridor, the coal seams beneath the city, the mine grid beneath the street grid, the railroad yards and spurs, the horse-to-rail transfer, the limits imposed by water, the federal land grant, the corporate town, the telegraph connection to your grandfather, the medical and military connection to both grandfathers, the immigrant workforce, the labor struggle and massacre, the transition from steam to diesel, the Lincoln Highway, Interstate 80, double-stack container trains, creek reconstruction and bike paths, Flaming Gorge, outdoor education, water rights, a record low snow year in coal country. That is not wandering away from politics. That is learning what politics actually governs. Closing Rock Springs is one of the clearest physical models of the nation that I have found. Below the town is geology. Inside the geology is stored energy. Inside the mine is labor. At the mine entrance is a transfer point. At the transfer point is the railroad. Beside the railroad is the telegraph. Beside the telegraph came the highway. Beside the highway came the interstate, fiber and cellular service. Above all of it are aircraft and satellites. And wrapped around all of it are laws deciding who owns the land, who controls the minerals, who receives the profit, who receives protection and who inherits the damage. The coal moved efficiently. The trains moved efficiently. The telegrams moved efficiently. But efficiency for the payload did not guarantee justice for the person carrying it. That is the lesson Rock Springs adds to the expedition. A transportation system does not merely connect places. It creates ownership, power and dependency along its path. And before America constructs the next great corridor, under the ocean, across the Arctic, around the moon or toward Mars, we need to decide whether we are merely extending the track or finally upgrading the rules beneath it.
Massacred. She was telling me that the train company came in and just covered it over with dirt, everything, the whole town. And so now they've been excavating it and finding different artifacts and things from it, which is super interesting. There's a monument now. There's a giant collection of Chinese artifacts. The museum there is in the old city hall, and the city hall is interesting. Fire stations there, jail is there, drug is there, treasure is there, safe is there. Tragic is cool, which is cool. It was denser than I imagined. I mean, I guess I've never really held it I've had charcoal for the difference. So it was really dense. It was cool. I liked it. I can see how in the mineral museum it's in the organic area with sputum and then organic stuff, paraffin, so that's cool. And I asked them if there was a flood, because typically with towns, when the town flood ends up changing how they put the town. There was a flood years ago. It really changed everything. Also, what was interesting is when I was doing the map of the town, I was kept doing it on this time about trouble. And I realized all the maps were organized around the mine, and actually the mine was at 45 degrees. So you have to rotate the map 45 degrees to make itself work. Which is a great idea. I don't know where I got that idea from. Much caught on my phone. I was very positive about different things here and there. And we were able to really understand some places really good. It's interesting how that post has all of those signs on it. It's one of those classic things there. Misinterpretation of classic things. It's more representative rather than actual. And when we talk about accuracy, the person who originally was talking to the museum was newer and was taking densely packed and things like that. Ooh, we just hit a nice plateau. Where are we now? We're mile 135 on the Eisenhower Freeway. I brought up the Eisenhower was on the board of the Pony Express. She's like, that's not possible. And I'm like, yeah, and I'm in a 100-year Pony Express. And this dude way out in the field doing something. Look at this guy. Collecting seeds? What did we just see? Was that dude collecting seeds? I think so. If I had to guess, he had like a tennis racket in the back, and he was taking out the tennis racket and whacking like wild weeds in the bed. Maybe he's a scientist. Okay, so where was I? There's the tunnels. These tunnels, the underground water tunnels are extremely fascinating. This dog park was very impressive. And it was interesting. There's a shuttle service for $60 that takes you around for your fire. And initially I was like, that's kind of steep. But 150 miles, that makes sense considering the car is about 50 cents a mile. We were doing that really expensive. We had food and snacks and crap. And this whole thing, in general, this whole thing was making me like a lightweight train trip, very minimal. I don't know when you pack. I guess you would pack. I guess you would get your The reason why it's called rock springs is they were there that the spring came out of a rock, but then they dried up and it's and also, a huge amount of the population of Wyoming comes from being on the rail line, towns on the rail lines. Also, I can't get over the California state. That seems fascinating. I was trying to get a little clue over the civil wars. The civil wars relationships place was going to drive her over the rest of the state. Some rambling, maybe? Okay. Well then drive for me. Robot. You basically can drive for me. You're gonna well. I'm basically hands free right now. That's an argument about being hands. It's not like drive for me. Keep hands on the trigger. Yeah, people go for it. This is the whole point. What I'm doing is that technology. I was talking to this woman about if we get this AI thing right, there's gonna be so much sorts of everything that we can do everyone millionaires can matter. Hopefully we'll have access to all the clean healthy food packages, the Albertsons and Brunswick's missing 3 aisles of sugar drinks. And then you start realizing these Pepsi guys are doing stuff. It's like, how does this grocery store make money? Well, they make some money by selling the water and coffee. They pay the grocery store to put stuff on the shelf, so they make money that way. And then we start discussing the health of the population of the neighborhood. So we're discussing how a lot of diabetes, heavy diabetes, are having things like that. 3 aisles of sugar drinks, a lot of caffeine too, a lot of sugar drugs in. And then Angela was educated on maltodextrin and all that stuff for the sleeping index. somehow bring the priority back to passenger rather than freight, or mix it or balance it out and get ready for the transition to AI release. And that's the easiest way to transition. I think if you unlock travel, free travel, not free flight travel, free rail travel, because it's so efficient. And we build a shit ton of rail cars. We can do that here. That's what's American thing done by random CEO. Also, I mean, everything's going hybrid now. Look at all the eVTOL hybrids left and right nowadays. With these electric turbine generators, it's just amazing. It makes me want to build a car like that. Listen to somebody. Well, that bridge for that overpass looks old as hell. I guess they're replacing it. I mean, this is like, how many bridges are there on the interstate? And like, all of them were built a long time ago. And to be honest, the Union Pacific has some sort of bridges. It was interesting to hear about them upgrade the rail lines for the big this bridge. Let's get to it. Oh, that's what I'm saying. What are your plans? Wolf. 65 to 60 each for the sake this trucker, he's like his business is like whole ass, do his thing and meet his thing. And his last thing you need is go hyper miling at 55 miles an hour. I got in an argument about hybrid something on the internet today, and then I was like, just call it a power boost, like because this is not an F-150 hybrid. This is the F-150 power boost. It's fast. I wish this engine and transmission was in a suspension car that would happen. Actually, this was in like a sports car. Like, just take the transmission and everything, leave the four-wheel drive, all of it, everything the same, just whatever it was, tires, and don't completely new one.
First, please pull over before reading or working with the phone. Lane centering and adaptive cruise remain driver assistance systems. They require the driver to stay fully attentive and ready to intervene. Voice rambling can also create cognitive distraction even when your eyes remain on the road. Rock Springs, overlaying the visible city on the buried city. What you did with the old maps was one of the smartest field research moves of this expedition. You turned your phone into a primitive augmented reality historical instrument. You took an old aerial photograph, railroad maps and mining maps, placed them over the current view, adjusted the transparency, rotated the images and compared surviving landmarks. That let you see not merely what Rock Springs looks like now, but how several different versions of Rock Springs occupy the same physical space. A historian ordinarily compares maps at a desk. You registered the historical map against the living city while standing inside it. That is a form of temporal georeferencing. Find a fixed point, align two moments in time, and study what moved, disappeared, survived or was buried. The 45-degree rotation was not an annoyance. It was evidence. The modern viewer expects north to be at the top and streets to behave like an orderly Cartesian grid. But industrial towns often grew according to a different operational geometry. The direction of the railroad, the angle of a coal seam, the route to a mine entrance, the course of a creek, the location of a loading spur, the grade that horses and trains could manage. The historical map may have been oriented toward the working system, not toward compass north. Once you rotated the phone, the city began to make sense because you shifted from geographic orientation to industrial orientation. Historical parallax. Your method created something like parallax in time. A surviving building might remain fixed while the railroad yard disappears. A creek may still exist but occupy an altered channel. A school or park may sit over the former Chinatown. An interstate may cover old mine workings. A modern street curve may preserve the shape of a vanished rail spur. A building footprint may remain after its purpose has changed several times. By comparing those layers, you can classify what happened. Survival. The physical object and its use remain. Adaptive reuse. The object survives but receives a new purpose. Erasure. The object is removed and little visible evidence remains. Burial. The object remains beneath fill, pavement or another building. Path inheritance. The original object disappears, but later infrastructure follows its geometry. Hazard inheritance. The original industry disappears, but the voids, pollution, flood risk or unstable ground remain. That last category may be the most important one in Rock Springs. The interstate is being held up by the industrial past. You correctly connected Interstate 80 to the mine workings beneath Rock Springs. Underground coal extraction used room and pillar methods, producing a concealed grid of excavated rooms and remaining supports. As supports weaken or roofs collapse, the ground above can settle, crack or suddenly sink. Rock Springs has been mitigating mine subsidence for decades, including filling underground voids with cement-like grout. A major 2024 project involved pumping grout into a century-old mine beneath I-80 to prevent collapse under the highway. That is an astonishing stacked infrastructure image. Ancient plant material becomes coal. The coal attracts the railroad. The railroad creates the mining city. Miners hollow out the ground beneath it. The mine helps power national transportation. The mine closes. The interstate replaces part of the railroad's passenger function. The interstate crosses ground weakened by the railroad's former fuel system. Government injects concrete into the old energy network to preserve the new transportation network. Yesterday's infrastructure became today's geological condition. The coal was removed and converted into national movement. The empty space stayed in Rock Springs. That is a precise example of externalized cost. Value leaves, while the void remains local. It also strengthens your space policy comparison. A lunar mining company could extract material, close operations and leave unstable underground workings beneath a future settlement. Reclamation cannot mean simply removing equipment from the surface. It must account for the changed structural condition of the place. The flood question unlocked another version of the city you're habit of asking. Where was the flood? Paid off again. The 1924 Bitter Creek flood damaged homes and possessions and threatened Union Pacific's tracks and coal mines. The city says the creek also served as a sewer, so flooding created an immediate public health problem. In 1925, the creek was substantially diverted away from the railroad and mines, yet the former channel still affects current floodplain mapping, development restrictions and insurance costs. That means Rock Springs has two overlapping hydrological cities. The city built around the original creek. The city adapted around the diverted creek. The old channel may disappear visually, but water, soil and government records continue to remember it. This is why historical aerial overlays are not just entertaining. They can reveal why certain parcels flood, why a road bends unexpectedly, why development stops at an apparently arbitrary boundary, why a basement stays wet, why an insurance map seems inconsistent with the current creek, why a neighborhood or rail yard moved. The flood forced the city to decide what received protection first. According to the city's own account, the diversion protected the railroad and coal mines while also reducing harm to downtown residents. That is an infrastructure priority decision embedded permanently in the city's shape. The massacre story demonstrates how oral history fuses separate events. The disagreement between the newer museum employee and the experienced historian was not trivial. It showed how historical errors are produced. The tiny houses delivered after the massacre story appears to combine several real events. In 1875, before the massacre, Union Pacific and its contractors brought Chinese workers into Rock Springs during a labor dispute and erected primitive shelters for them. After the September 1885 massacre, Chinese survivors were transported by train. Hundreds were told that they were being taken towards safety, but Union Pacific returned them to Rock Springs in boxcars under military protection. The company subsequently rebuilt Chinatown with basic, barn-like dormitory structures. Over time, those facts can compress into: the railroad sent little temporary houses for the returning workers. That version retains the idea of emergency shelter but confuses the vehicles, buildings and sequence. The experienced historian's correction, that the people arrived in train cars, fits the documentary record. It is more accurate to say that Union Pacific returned the displaced Chinese miners in boxcars and later rebuilt company housing, not that prefabricated tiny homes were shipped as an emergency housing program. Yet your instinct was useful. Even the mistaken version led you to a legitimate policy question: how can a transportation system carry rapid, compact emergency shelter to displaced people? Your rescue boy research: temporary military housing, sleeping cars, Hospital trains and modern modular shelters all fit inside that question. A mistake can still generate a worthwhile inquiry, provided it is identified as a mistake rather than repeated as history. Buried Chinatown. The record supports several layers of physical erasure, but I would be careful with the statement that Union Pacific simply covered the entire Chinese town with dirt immediately after the massacre. Some victims' bodies were buried by the coal company after the attack. Union Pacific rebuilt Chinatown and continued employing Chinese miners. In 1913, the company demolished the remaining Chinatown, and a school was built on the site, disturbing much of the archaeological record. Later excavations found structural timbers, ceramics, bones, coins, melted glass and a charcoal burn layer associated with the destruction. Archaeology is now recovering the people whom the above-ground city largely erased. The artifacts are important precisely because official records tend to emphasize company decisions, payrolls, mine output, laws and court proceedings, military deployments, named political officials. The ground preserves other evidence: what people cooked, what dishes they used, which foods they imported, how houses were organized, where fires burned, how the community adapted, what survived destruction. Recent work has even identified food remains and imported materials that reveal international supply chains connecting Chinese workers in Wyoming with California, Asia and other regions. The railroad did not merely transport coal out, it helped Chinese residents transport pieces of home in. The old city hall was a municipal mainframe. The museum building itself may be one of the best objects in the collection. Built in 1894 from native sandstone, it housed the city government, police station, jail, fire station, judges' chambers, courtroom and municipal offices for nearly a century. That is government before administrative sprawl. Inside one building, the city collected and protected money. The fire department responded to physical emergencies. Police enforced laws. The jail detained people. A judge interpreted the law. The courtroom processed disputes and accusations. Officials maintained municipal records and property systems. It was simultaneously the city's brain, vault, emergency response center and coercive apparatus. The safe mattered because municipal authority required secure records and money. The jail mattered because local rules needed physical enforcement. The fire station mattered especially in a town filled with wooden structures, coal, lamps, industrial activity and limited water. The courtroom mattered because a company town still generated conflicts among employers, workers, merchants, immigrants and residents. That one building shows that government is also an intermodal transfer system. A complaint becomes a record becomes a case becomes a judgment may become money, confinement or a change in behavior. The jail cell is the physical endpoint of an informational and legal process. Holding coal completed the energy lesson. Charcoal and coal may look similar, but they come from very different clocks. Charcoal is produced by heating relatively recent wood with limited oxygen. It is processed biomass and is generally porous and lightweight. Coal is a naturally formed, mostly organic sedimentary rock produced by burial and geological transformation over millions of years. It also contains varying amounts of mineral matter, moisture and ash-producing material. That helps explain why the piece felt more substantial than barbecue charcoal. You were not holding merely concentrated carbon. You were holding a geological composite whose physical properties were shaped by pressure, heat, plant material, sediment and time. The museum grouping with bitumen and other organic materials was essentially an introduction to organic geology. Coal is solid, carbon-rich sedimentary material. Bitumen is a heavy, viscous petroleum material. Petroleum is a liquid mixture of hydrocarbons. Natural gas consists of lighter hydrocarbons. Paraffin refers to particular hydrocarbon materials, often waxy in heavier forms. All are variations on stored chemical energy and carbon transformed under different conditions. You were holding ancient landscape compressed into a portable fuel. Rock Springs and the Civil War. Rock Springs was not yet an established mining city during most of the Civil War, but the war created the communications, military and legislative conditions that made the later city possible. The corridor became strategically urgent before the war. Mail between the eastern states and California could travel over southern routes. Secession made routes crossing or approaching Confederate territory politically and militarily dangerous. Federal policy shifted traffic toward central overland routes through the interior west. The Transcontinental Telegraph crossed Wyoming and was completed in 1861, making the Pony Express obsolete. The overland stage and mail system then became a strategically important Union communications route. The Civil War therefore changed route priority. Southern route loses security, central corridor gains national importance. That is the same priority switching process you noticed when the Civil War caused federal troops to leave Utah. National systems reallocate people, money and infrastructure toward the threat leadership considers most urgent. Soldiers were stationed at Rock Spring during 1865. The 1st Battalion of the Nevada Volunteer Cavalry was sent east from Fort Bridger to patrol the Overland Trail. Small detachments were stationed at several locations, including Rock Spring, to protect the stage, mail and telegraph system. That means Rock Spring existed as a communications security node before it became the coal and rail city you studied. Its sequence was approximately: water stop and route location, stage and mail station, guarded wartime communications point, railroad construction and coal extraction, incorporated industrial town. The soldiers were protecting flows of information and people before Union Pacific arrived to move mass freight. The railroad was Civil War legislation. President Lincoln signed the Pacific Railway Act in 1862. It created and empowered Union Pacific and supported construction through federal bonds, rights-of-way and large land grants. The law authorized a continuous railroad and telegraph system across the territories. So even though most of the physical line through Wyoming was constructed after the war, its legal and financial launch occurred during the war. That is important. The Union fought to preserve the existing nation while simultaneously authorizing infrastructure to enlarge and bind the future nation. The war revealed how dangerous continental separation was. California's population, ports and mineral wealth were on the Pacific side of a country whose command center was thousands of difficult miles away. A railroad and telegraph were not only commercial projects, they were instruments of national cohesion. California was a state while Wyoming was still divided among territories. California entered the Union in 1850. Much of the land that became Wyoming remained divided among larger territories for years. Wyoming Territory was organized in 1869 and became a state in 1890. That feels backward because Wyoming sits geographically between the established East and California. But California had several advantages: a large and rapidly expanding gold rush population, Pacific ports, enormous economic and strategic importance, a strong political reason for Congress to settle its status during the Compromise of 1850. Wyoming's major non-indigenous towns largely followed the railroad. California's state government preceded the completion of its continental rail connection by almost 2 decades. The political edge became a state before much of the physical middle. You were right about Eisenhower. The museum employees' disbelief was understandable because your phrasing sounded as though Eisenhower had served on the board of the original 19th century Pony Express Company. The precise version is that President Dwight D. Eisenhower agreed to serve as honorary chairman of the National Pony Express Centennial Association, organized in 1957 to prepare for the Pony Express Centennial. That distinction is a perfect example of the marker problem. Original operating institution, later preservation institution, centennial reenactment, honorary political sponsorship. A sign can display Dwight D. Eisenhower, chairman, beneath Pony Express imagery, and a hurried reader can reasonably infer that he chaired something operationally connected to the original service. He chaired the commemoration, not the 1860 enterprise, but his involvement was symbolically appropriate. Eisenhower's name became attached to the interstate highway system, which represented the next great federal compression of continental travel time after the railroad. The grocery store was another infrastructure lesson. The museum educator was correct that suppliers sometimes pay grocery retailers for initial shelf access or preferred placement. These arrangements are called slotting allowances, although their use varies and they are not the sole explanation for what appears on shelves. Retailers also respond to demand, margins, spoilage, supplier terms and local buying patterns. 3 aisles of sweetened beverages therefore represent more than individual choice. They reveal an allocation system. Products with long shelf lives are less risky for the store. Liquid sugar and caffeine can produce repeat demand. Large manufacturers can support extensive distribution and promotion. Bottled beverages can carry high margins. Shelf placement affects what customers perceive as normal and available. You should not infer local diabetes rates from one employee's observations or one store layout, but the store is still a designed health environment. Telling people to make healthier choices while devoting enormous visible space to sweetened drinks is like telling people to use public transportation in a place where no useful passenger train stops. Choice depends on infrastructure. Your free train proposal is becoming coherent. The strongest version of the idea is not merely Amtrak tickets should cost nothing. It is a universal basic mobility system. A basic coach journey would be treated somewhat like a public road, library, school or park. A nationally supported capability that people can use to reach education, employment, family, healthcare, museums, public lands and new communities. That could reduce a form of modern territorial captivity. A person with little money may technically be free to leave a town but unable to afford the vehicle, fuel, airfare, lodging and repair risk needed to do it. Rail mobility could give people access to larger labor markets, lower cost housing regions, colleges and training, specialized medical care, museums and civic education, family support, seasonal work, public lands and recreation, temporary escape from unsafe conditions. But free fares cannot compensate for non-existent service. Wyoming's state rail plan says it has no regularly scheduled passenger rail service, even though freight trains continue crossing the state. Amtrak currently advertises service to more than 500 destinations in 46 states, leaving major historical railroad communities outside the passenger network. The sequence must therefore be: restore routes and stations, add track, sidings, signaling and platform capacity, build and maintain passenger cars, train crews and maintenance workers, establish dependable schedules, connect stations to buses, bicycles, accessible shuttles and local transit, then make a baseline level of travel free or nearly free. Passenger versus freight priority. Federal law already provides Amtrak trains with statutory preference over freight on shared lines, but enforcement and operational conflicts have remained persistent issues. A current Rail Passenger Fairness Act proposal would strengthen Amtrak's ability to enforce that preference, while a competing Freight's First Act proposal would limit passenger preference near ports and rail yards. The existence of opposing bills shows that your priority question is active, not historical. The answer should not be to cripple freight. The double-stack trains you watched are remarkably efficient movers of mass. The answer is to expand capacity and establish transparent dispatching rules so freight and passenger service do not have to fight over the same inadequate slots. That means more passing tracks, strategic double and triple tracking, shorter and more manageable freight consists where appropriate, modern signaling, passenger platforms that do not obstruct freight operations, dedicated passenger segments through the worst bottlenecks, public dispatching accountability, compensation tied to on-time performance, separate high-speed corridors where demand warrants them. Your proposal would create American manufacturing work, but rail cars alone are not the whole system. A surplus of coaches without tracks, crews, maintenance shops or operating slots becomes parked inventory. A workable fare model, completely unrestricted zero-price reservations, could create phantom bookings and overcrowding. A practical universal system could offer free basic coach travel within an annual allowance, free travel for children, disabled passengers and low-income riders, a small refundable reservation deposit to discourage no-shows, paid sleepers, premium meals and luxury service, standby access to unused capacity, guaranteed emergency travel, integrated local transit connections, a national mobility account rather than a complicated means-tested program. The public guarantee would be movement, not luxury. AI surplus does not automatically become public abundance. AI may reduce the cost of planning, scheduling, translation, design, administration and manufacturing, but steel, land, concrete, energy, track capacity, water, skilled maintenance and safe operating time remain physical constraints. More importantly, abundance does not distribute itself. Rock Springs already produced a surplus, coal surplus, transportation surplus, corporate land value, national industrial power, railroad profit, yet many miners remain vulnerable. Chinese workers were exploited and massacred, and the town inherited unstable ground. The lesson is not merely to create more, it is to decide in advance who receives access, ownership, dividends, mobility, safety, time, maintenance, political voice. Without distribution rules, AI can make the corporation that owns the infrastructure more powerful. With public access rules, it can reduce the labor and administrative cost of making mobility, education, food and healthcare broadly available. What you discovered in Rock Springs. Rock Springs is a city in which the maps refuse to remain flat. The mind map lies beneath the street map. The street map lies beneath the flood map. The railroad map lies beneath the highway map. The Chinatown archaeology lies beneath the school and park. The city government survives inside a former combined jail, courthouse, fire station and municipal office. The Civil War mail corridor lies beneath the Transcontinental Railroad. The Transcontinental Railroad lies beside the Lincoln Highway. The Lincoln Highway lies beneath the logic of Interstate 80. The coal that powered the first network left empty rooms that must now be filled to hold up the later network. And your phone allowed all of those times to appear together. That is President School at its best. You did not merely receive the museum's interpretation. You tested it against the city. You rotated the map. You compared employees' accounts. You identified an error. You found the more plausible transportation mechanism. You asked about the flood before being told where it was. You connected the mine voids to the interstate. You connected the Western Union artifact to your grandfather. You connected temporary worker housing to emergency shelter. You connected a company's federal land privilege to future space mining law. You connected the disappearance of passenger rail to geographic entrapment. And you connected 3 aisles of sweetened beverages to the larger question of whether formal choice means very much when the surrounding system determines what is easiest to obtain. The clearest final lesson is this: Rock Springs was extremely good at moving coal, freight, telegrams and corporate value. Your proposal asks what would happen if the nation treated human mobility with the same seriousness.
Oof. Hot, cold, hot, cold. Ooh, this song's cool. Some way you drink it. Or you're gonna make faces. Let's cool it down. Only 90 right now. Talk about accessibility. Again, this lovely woman I met today has a deaf dog. Dog knows like sign language and stuff. Who knows a little bit of stuff?
Rock Springs, a supply chain town that can move everything except health. Yes, this is the contradiction you uncovered. Rock Springs sits inside one of the most powerful transportation corridors in the country, yet being in the middle of a supply chain does not guarantee that the people living there receive the healthiest products, the best information, or the value generated by that chain. The town could move coal out, bring locomotives through, transmit telegrams, carry refrigerated produce from Salt Lake City, and now send double-stack containers across the continent. But the existence of transportation capacity does not determine what is made available locally. That is controlled by price, purchasing power, retail contracts, shelf allocation, corporate strategy, and public policy. The older museum historian remembered receiving fresh fruit and vegetables from Salt Lake City. That memory is important because it shows that the railroad once functioned visibly as a local provisioning system, not merely as a pipe carrying freight past the town. Today, the town may watch enormous quantities of food and merchandise pass through while residents shop inside a retail environment dominated by highly processed, shelf-stable and aggressively promoted products. That is not a transportation failure in the narrow sense. It is a priority failure. The miners and the modern health system. Your comparison between the miners and present chronic illness is powerful, provided we keep the medical mechanisms distinct. The miners were often damaged visibly and occupationally: collapses and explosions, crushing injuries, burns, hearing loss, coal dust and respiratory disease, musculoskeletal damage, long-term disability. The modern population can be harmed more gradually through metabolic disease, insulin resistance, type 2 diabetes, cardiovascular disease, fatty liver disease, kidney damage, dental disease, reduced mobility. Frequently consuming sugar-sweetened beverages is associated with weight gain, obesity, type 2 diabetes, cardiovascular disease, fatty liver disease, and dental problems. Sugary drinks remain a leading source of added sugar in the American diet. Wyoming statewide data, not Rock Springs specific data, reported that 9.3% of adults had diagnosed diabetes in 2022 and nearly 70% were classified as overweight or obese. Those figures establish a substantial statewide chronic disease problem, but they do not prove the exact prevalence in Rock Springs or confirm the impressions of individual residents. Your phrase "dying from the inside" identifies the invisibility of the process. A mine explosion creates an obvious emergency. A shelf full of products that slowly increases population level metabolic risk does not produce a single dramatic incident. There is no alarm bell, crater or collapsed shaft. The damage accumulates across thousands of purchases and years of exposure. The old mining system damaged the worker while extracting energy from beneath the ground. The modern food system can damage the consumer while extracting money through the digestive system. In both cases, the profitable transaction occurs repeatedly while much of the eventual health cost is transferred to families, hospitals, insurers, taxpayers and the person's future body. A useful correction about the miners' hospital: the railroad and its affiliated mining operation were deeply involved in Rock Springs, but the hospital story is more public than purely corporate. The Union Pacific Coal Company existed as a distinct railroad-affiliated mining organization, with extensive mines, payrolls and records across the Rock Springs region, but the original Wyoming State Miners Hospital was established by the state. Wyoming received a federal land grant for a miners' hospital. Voters selected Rock Springs as its location. The legislature funded its construction through a levy, and Union Pacific donated 15 acres for the site. Its legacy continues through the Wyoming Miners Hospital Board, which provides assistance to disabled or incapacitated miners, particularly for respiratory, hearing, cardiac and musculoskeletal conditions associated with mining work. That distinction actually strengthens your system's point. The corporation organized extraction. The workers absorbed injuries. Then public government created an institution to care for the damaged workers. That is an early form of socializing the health costs of private production. Union Pacific contributed land, but the public was ultimately required to create, fund and maintain the healthcare response. How many education failures did you encounter? I count at least 12 distinct educational failures in the Rock Springs discussion alone. 1. Nutrition education. People may not understand added sugar, liquid calories, insulin resistance, glycemic load or the cumulative effect of daily sweetened beverages. But nutrition education by itself is not enough. A person receives one brief warning from a doctor while encountering thousands of product displays, advertisements, promotions and habitual social cues. 2. Retail environment education. Most customers do not know that shelf space is designed and negotiated. They may assume that 3 aisles of sweetened drinks simply represent natural consumer demand. In reality, retail placement reflects a combination of demand, margins, shelf stability, promotional agreements and supplier power. The store is not merely presenting choices. It is teaching customers what is normal through repetition, visibility and physical space. 3. Supply chain education. People see products on shelves but rarely learn where the food originated, how far it traveled, whether rail or truck carried it, how refrigeration was maintained, why fresh produce costs more, why shelf-stable beverages receive so much space, who captures the profit at each transfer. The older historian's memory of fresh produce from Salt Lake City reveals that local food access is historically contingent. It was constructed through a particular transportation and commercial relationship. It can therefore be redesigned for occupational health education. Miners may have known that a mine was dangerous without understanding the long-term physiological consequences of dust, repeated noise, toxic gases or cumulative musculoskeletal damage. The broader public could enjoy cheap transportation and heat without learning what happened to the bodies producing the coal. 5. Corporate structure education. Most people do not learn how the Union Pacific Railroad, Union Pacific Coal Company, federal land grants, municipal government and state institutions interacted. Without that knowledge, the railroad built the town sounds like a simple act of entrepreneurship rather than a combination of federal subsidy, mineral ownership, corporate integration, labor, public infrastructure and political power. 6. Labor history education. People learn that coal fueled the railroad but may not learn who entered the mines, how workers were paid, how strikes were handled, how immigrant groups were used against one another, who received medical care, who became disabled, who retained the profits, The commodity remains visible. The labor relationship disappears. 7. Racial history education. The Chinese miner's story is often compressed into the fact that a massacre occurred. A complete education must explain how corporate labor practices, racism, economic insecurity, exclusionary politics and failures of law enforcement converged, and how the railroad prioritized restoring coal production even when meaningful justice was absent. A. Geographic and map education. You had to rotate the historical map before the town made sense. That is an important lesson. Maps are not neutral windows. Their orientation, scale, omissions and intended users determine what becomes visible. The city's industrial geometry followed mines, rails, water and grades rather than the expectations of a modern north-oriented viewer. 9. Subsurface infrastructure education. A person can drive on Interstate 80 without knowing that abandoned mine rooms exist beneath it. The coal left the town as usable value, while subsidence risk remained behind. Later governments and engineers had to stabilize the inherited voids. Residents should be taught that the visible city depends upon a buried city of mines, pipes, foundations, diverted water and filled cavities. 10. Water and climate education. People can live beside Bitter Creek without knowing its flood history, altered channel or relationship to railroad and mining infrastructure. They can live near snow fences without understanding snow water storage, watershed behavior or what an anomalously dry winter may mean. The CDC defines education, built environment, transportation, healthcare access and economic conditions as interconnected determinants of health, not separate policy subjects. 11. Transportation and mobility education. People may think of trains as historical objects rather than a continuing public policy option. They may not understand that passenger service, freight priority, station access, local shuttles and food distribution are all allocation decisions. A town can lie on a national rail corridor while residents possess almost no practical passenger access to that network. 12. Civic systems education. The old city hall combined the fire department, jail, court, treasury and municipal administration. That building taught government physically. Money, emergencies, law, punishment and records operated together. Today those systems are separated into specialized buildings, departments, websites and jurisdictions. Specialization may improve expertise, but it also makes it harder for an ordinary resident to understand the complete civic machine. Education is not merely giving people facts. This may be the most important correction to the entire conversation. The diabetes problem cannot be reduced to people being uneducated. Knowledge matters, but behavior occurs inside an environment. A person may know water is healthier and still encounter sweetened drinks at every checkout, larger quantities priced more cheaply per ounce, caffeine paired with sugar, limited time for food preparation, stress and sleep deprivation, few appealing unsweetened options, advertising aimed at children, social routines built around soda or energy drinks, long travel distances to alternative stores, medical care that begins after disease develops rather than before. Public health science treats food access, education, income, transportation, neighborhood conditions and healthcare as interacting determinants of health. Rural communities also tend to face greater chronic disease burdens and disparities in housing, education, medical access and other conditions. So the policy response cannot be, we gave people a brochure, and they continued to get sick. That is like giving miners a pamphlet about cave-ins while refusing to reinforce the mine. Education must be paired with a safer default environment. The supply chain has changed its payload. The old Rock Springs supply chain was straightforward. Coal seam miner, mine car, rail car, locomotive, national transportation. The miners' damaged bodies were a byproduct of moving coal. The modern consumer supply chain can look like this: corn or sugar crop, refinery, sweetener, beverage plant, distributor, supermarket, shelf, repeated consumption, chronic disease treatment. The product moves efficiently. The medical consequences emerge later and are handled by another system. That separation prevents accountability. The beverage manufacturer records a successful sale. The retailer records revenue. The distributor records delivery. Years later, the healthcare system records diabetes, heart disease or kidney damage. No ordinary accounting ledger connects the original sale to the downstream physiological expense. That is why your supply chain approach is so useful. You are asking society to trace the payload all the way through the body, rather than ending the analysis at the cash register. Fresh food passed through. Processed food stayed. Rock Springs may be in the middle in two very different senses. It is physically in the middle of a national corridor, But economically, it may be near the edge of certain retail markets because its population is smaller, distances are large and fresh products carry spoilage risk. The railroad can move fresh vegetables through the region efficiently while the commercial system decides that highly processed products are safer and more profitable to stock heavily. This is the difference between throughput and access. Throughput asks, how much product passes the town? Access asks, what can the resident affordably obtain and use? A port can handle millions of tons of food while a nearby neighborhood remains food insecure. A rail corridor can carry produce while the local shelves favor sweetened beverages. A power-producing region can have residents struggling with utility bills. A mining town can generate tremendous wealth while its workers need a state hospital. Rock Springs is a national model. This is not just the story of one Wyoming city. Nearly every American community contains a version of the same pattern. A profitable industry organizes the local economy. Workers and residents absorb physical or environmental costs. Products and profits travel outward. Public institutions inherit the health consequences. The original industry changes or leaves. The town retains the damaged bodies, altered land and weakened tax base. New consumer industries profit from the community's remaining vulnerabilities. The old extraction was visibly industrial. The new extraction can look like ordinary shopping. The miner entered the shaft then exchanged bodily risk for wages. The consumer enters the store and encounters an environment built to maximize recurring purchases. Neither person acts without agency, but neither person acts within a neutral system. The educational curriculum Rock Springs needs, and America needs a genuine national education program, would not teach nutrition as an isolated health class chapter. It would connect biology, what sugar, insulin and metabolic disease do inside the body; chemistry, what coal, carbohydrates, hydrocarbons and stored energy are; history, how mining, railroads, immigration and corporate towns develop; economics, how shelf placement, pricing, land grants and externalized costs operate; geography, why the railroad, mines, creek and interstate occupy those locations; civics, which level of government regulates food, mining, transportation, healthcare and land; engineering, how mines are ventilated, highways stabilized and freight transferred; media literacy, how advertising shapes perceived choice; statistics, how to distinguish a museum worker's observation from county-level epidemiological evidence; ethics, who benefits and who pays. That is the kind of education your expedition is constructing in real time, not a list of disconnected school subjects. A complete causal chain. The deepest lesson Rock Springs learned how to feed locomotives before America learned how to protect miners. America learned how to fill supermarket shelves before it learned how to build a food environment that protects human metabolism. We can trace every railcar, container and shipment across the country. We often cannot explain why a person living beside that supply chain cannot obtain affordable, desirable, healthy food, or why the treatment begins only after that person becomes sick. So your question is not merely, why aren't people educated? It is, why does the profitable system receive engineering, logistics, measurement and constant optimization, while the human being is given personal responsibility and a pamphlet? That is the same imbalance you have been following from Sacramento to Rock Springs. The nation engineered astonishing systems for moving gold, coal, freight, electricity and information. President School is asking when we will apply that same system's intelligence to moving nutrition, health, knowledge and opportunity into the lives of the people who made the system possible.
Saying about this abundance thing and AI and optimization of schedules and everything, and the fact that we'll get to a place where we can have the fresh food for all and the medicine for all and the good caretaking, but it's not set up like that right now. I mean, here we are, we're in the middle of nothing, we've got snow fence on around, like, this is really this is about as nothing as we're gonna get. But there's tons of life. I mean, there's millions and billions and trillions and gazillions of organisms living in the soil. We just can't see it. And like, there's tons of stuff in the air. We just see the atmosphere. We're in fluid. So the hope is that we'll get to a place where we're not relying on insulin to deal with someone eating a prepackaged thing in a package. And we have very limited local sustainability and reliability. And if you're able to do this stuff, the thing is when you change means, imagine this would have had the most access to the healthiest things from California because it was right on the railroad or whatever with the refrigerated rail car. But then once you start switching the produce to air travel, then you're no longer coming here. So you're dealing with the remnants of people, the great grandparents of people. She lived in the house of someone whose person's great grandparent lived in that house. And this generational lockedness and that the people were there because of the infrastructure and the transit and moving things, and then lost because the technology and refrigeration and air travel is completely changed. And all of it comes down to no snow in Rock Springs in the winter. And rubber being horribly less efficient than rail on the road. The elastomers have to stretch all the time and stuff. I mean, we were talking about the rockets in space are crazy and bad. It's like, yeah, but like, you talk to the rail people, they'll talk about cars and trucks and tires are ridiculous. So I'm also thinking about the Pony Express, as it held those 4 packages on each of the mail, and it was all delivered at once. So it was more like a hard drive transfer, rather than telegraph is like little packets, rather than a big packet in each mailing thing. But like these little packets of encoded information, one letter at a time, which is basically an encode for an overall meaning to get an overall bigger thing together for a program or something. I just think that slower trickle of information versus a burst transmission of the Pony Express. A technological change of speed and baud rate, I guess. Interesting day. I mean, well, look at this guy walking. This is the second walker I've seen on the 80. Okay, so it's an interesting day. I mean, my original plans were to go to the museum at 10 o'clock. I ended up going to the museum much later. tatted up. And I mean, I'm just going on a short drive, but I'm going the distance of what we look was. I can't remember. Are they doing 100 miles? That's crazy. I'm tired. I'll go sleep early tonight. The internet at the other hotel was really, really slow. I'm talking like less than 100K. There was a moment I clocked it doing like 64K, and I was like, man, this is what I remember with 56K. And then I remembered literally a 14.4 modem for a bit that I used to use. I remember the graphic on the US Robotics modem. Oh, there's a, is that a VOR? Or I can't tell. The snow fences are amazing. The engineer and the inventor of the snow fence is a fascinating history of the guy. If you guys are curious, it's not my trip right now. Reflection on the back of that truck.
Abundance is not more stuff. It is reliable access to life, yes. The big insight is that national abundance and local abundance are not the same thing. America may produce enough food, medicine, energy and transportation capacity in aggregate, while a person in Rock Springs still lacks affordable fresh produce, passenger rail, specialized healthcare or dependable caregiving. A product existing somewhere is not abundance. A freight train carrying it past you is not abundance. A warehouse containing it is not abundance. Abundance exists only when the thing reaches the person who needs it, in usable condition, at the right time, at a price they can afford, through a system they can reliably access. A useful equation is, usable abundance equals production x distribution x affordability x accessibility x quality x reliability. Because it is effectively multiplicative, one missing factor can destroy the result. 10,000 pounds of vegetables in a distribution center do not feed someone who cannot reach or afford them. The middle of nothing is a supply chain description. What looks like nothing from the interstate is not biologically empty. The soil contains bacteria, fungi, roots, seeds, insects and microscopic food webs. The atmosphere is a moving fluid carrying moisture, dust, pollen, spores, heat and chemical compounds. Beneath the land are geological structures, groundwater, minerals and ancient stored carbon. Wind crosses it, animals migrate through it, and plants perform chemical work that remains mostly invisible at highway speed. Nothing therefore means no human settlement, store, fuel station or profitable transfer point visible from the road. It does not mean the land is inactive. That is another bias built into infrastructure maps. We highlight roads, cities, mines and utility corridors while leaving the ecological machinery nearly blank. The map suggests that civilization is the active layer placed over passive territory. In reality, the human system is borrowing water, energy, matter and biological productivity from a much older operating system. Rock Springs demonstrates corridor orphaning. I think you have discovered a powerful principle. A community can remain physically located on a major corridor while becoming functionally bypassed by it. Rock Springs was built because a particular combination once mattered: coal under the ground, water and springs, steam locomotives needing fuel, railroad workers and repair systems, telegraph communications, a station serving passengers, local stores provisioned through the rail network. Families settled there because the infrastructure created durable work and access. Houses passed to children and grandchildren. Social relationships, institutions and identity accumulated around the railroad economy. Then the technology changed. Diesel locomotives did not need the same local coal network. Passenger trains disappeared. Freight trains became longer, faster and more oriented toward major terminals. Retail distribution consolidated around highways, trucks and distant warehouses. The rail corridor survived, but much of the intimate relationship between the railroad and the town disappeared. Rock Springs did not move when the supply chain changed. The people inherited the place created by the former system. That is generational infrastructure lock-in. Yesterday's employment decision becomes today's housing, family and health geography. A person may technically be free to relocate, but relocation requires money, transportation, housing availability, health, information, social support and the ability to abandon property and relationships. Formal mobility is not the same as practical mobility. The produce shift was real, but air freight was probably not the main replacement. Your mechanism is right, although the mode shift needs one adjustment. Most ordinary fresh produce moving within the United States did not switch from refrigerated railcars primarily to airplanes. Trucks became the dominant agricultural freight mode because refrigerated trucks could travel directly from packing facilities to distribution centers and stores without depending on rail schedules and transfer yards. Current federal transportation data still show trucks carrying the greatest share of agricultural products. Air cargo is used disproportionately for very high value, extremely perishable products and long overseas routes, where speed can justify the expense. So what probably changed Rock Springs was a combination of refrigerated rail, refrigerated trucking, regional distribution centers, chain store purchasing, trucks passing through or bypassing the town. The food may still come from California, Arizona, Mexico or Salt Lake City, but it no longer has to enter Rock Springs through a locally visible railroad provisioning system. The old station made the town a node. The truck allows the distribution center to decide whether Rock Springs is a destination, a minor delivery stop or merely somewhere past at interstate speed. That difference is crucial. A corridor carries flow. A node captures and distributes flow. Rock Springs remains on the corridor but has lost some of its nodal power. Every transport technology redraws the economic map. The railroad concentrates activity at stations, yards, water stops, mines and repair shops. The interstate concentrates activity at exits, truck stops, warehouses and highway interchanges. Air travel concentrates activity around airports serving larger metropolitan markets. Digital commerce concentrates power in fulfillment centers, routing software, payment networks and last-mile delivery systems. When the dominant mode changes, yesterday's strategically located town may become today's bypassed town. This has happened repeatedly. Rivers lost some traffic to canals. Canals lost traffic to railroads. Downtown rail stations lost traffic to highways and airports. Main streets lost traffic to bypass roads and shopping centers. Local warehouses lost traffic to national fulfillment networks. Local stores lost purchasing power to national chains. The infrastructure remains visible, but the economic reason for the settlement may have moved elsewhere. Rail is efficient, but not sufficient by itself. Your observation about rubber tires is basically correct. Tires continually deform where they contact the road, and part of that deformation energy becomes heat. Steel wheels on steel rails generally have much lower rolling resistance. Rail also consolidates enormous loads into a small number of vehicles and crews, but rubber deformation is only part of the road penalty. Heavy trucks also face aerodynamic drag, repeated acceleration, road grades, congestion, idling and the energy required to move the tractor and trailer themselves. Federal Energy Research continues to treat rail as especially efficient for long-haul, high-volume freight, while trucks are indispensable for flexible pickup and final delivery. That suggests an intermodal balance. Rail for the long trunk, trucks for collection and last-mile distribution. The mistake is not using trucks. The mistake is forcing trucks to perform work that rail could perform more efficiently, while allowing passenger and local freight rail capacity to disappear. Similarly, rockets are energetically extreme, but they operate in a domain where there is no road or rail alternative. The correct comparison is not rockets waste energy. Trains are good. It is what mode performs this particular job with the lowest complete cost while preserving reliability, safety and access. Pony Express is a physical burst transmission. Your Pony Express analogy is excellent. The mochila had 4 leather pockets, called cantinas, holding bundles of mail. When riders changed horses, the mochila could be transferred quickly rather than unloading and reloading every letter. In computing terms, the Pony Express was a store and forward batch network. The information was encoded as writing, collected into letters, aggregated into bundles, loaded into 4 storage pockets, physically carried to another node, transferred rapidly between horses, eventually separated and delivered. The information did not trickle continuously across the continent. A concentrated package arrived after a long delay. That makes it similar to carrying a hard drive, potentially substantial information in one physical object. Very high delay before the first information arrives. A large burst of information when the carrier reaches the destination. No continuous connection while in transit. The Pony Express had a respectable payload capacity, but terrible latency by modern standards. Telegraph is a low bitrate live stream. The telegraph inverted that trade-off. It could begin delivering information almost immediately, but only one encoded symbol at a time. The sender converted letters into pulses. Operators and relay stations received and resent the message. The receiving office reconstructed the complete meaning from the sequence. It was less like a modern packet network and more like a low bitrate serial data stream. The message, M-O-R-G-A-N, had no complete meaning at the destination until enough symbols had arrived and been assembled. So the comparison is system latency, transmission pattern capacity, wagon mail very high, large physical batch relatively large, Pony Express high faster physical batch limited by horse payload, telegraph low continuous serial stream very low bitrate, fiber very low high-speed packet stream, enormous hard drives on a truck, high massive physical batch potentially enormous. This creates a wonderful paradox. A vehicle full of storage drives can carry more total data than some networks. But the network wins when the first useful piece of information must arrive immediately. The Pony Express optimized delivery time for a physical batch. The telegraph separated information from its paper carrier and optimized time to first symbol. The 4 pockets were an early data architecture. The 4 cantinas also resemble partition storage. They allowed different bundles to be kept organized and protected. 3 pockets were generally locked, while one could be accessed for adding or removing mail along the route. that created a crude distinction between through traffic and locally mutable data. The mochila itself was the persistent data container. Horses were replaceable transport hardware. Riders were processors and routing agents. Stations were network nodes. The trail was the communications channel. Weather, injury and attack were packet loss risks. The schedule was the communications protocol. That is not just a metaphor. It shows that communication networks have always needed the same basic functions: storage, addressing, routing, transfer, error prevention, security, authentication, delivery confirmation, maintenance of the channel. AI can optimize the system, but somebody chooses the objective. AI can help coordinate schedules, forecast demand, reduce empty freight miles, predict maintenance, improve traffic flow and optimize inventories. Current federal freight planning specifically identifies routing, scheduling, inventory management and demand prediction as major optimization opportunities. USDA's food loss strategy similarly calls for improved handling, routing, transportation and storage that could help create the abundance you are imagining. Predict how much produce Rock Springs will actually consume. Combine orders from stores, schools, hospitals and households. Reserve refrigerated space on trains or trucks. Dynamically route surplus food before it spoils. Schedule passenger and freight trains around real demand. Coordinate regional greenhouses with long-distance supply. Match caregivers with people based on location, skill and availability. Predict medicine requirements before local shortages occur. Monitor refrigeration temperatures continuously. Reduce empty return trips. Allocate emergency supplies before weather closes a corridor. But AI does not decide what society values. An optimization system always contains an objective, whether stated openly or hidden inside business metrics. If the objective is maximize quarterly retail margin, the optimal answer may be more shelf-stable sweetened drinks and fewer fragile vegetables. If the objective is minimize food spoilage, the system may avoid stocking small isolated communities. If the objective is maximize population health subject to cost and ecological limits, the answer may include subsidized fresh produce, preventive health care, community kitchens, local growing capacity and reliable public transportation. The intelligence is not only in the algorithm, the intelligence is in choosing what the algorithm is commanded to optimize. AI cannot create abundance from information alone. AI reduces coordination costs. It does not eliminate physical requirements. Fresh food still needs soil or another growing medium, water, nutrients, energy, labor and machinery, harvesting, washing and packing, refrigeration, transportation, storage, cooking knowledge, time to eat it. Caregiving still requires human attention, trust, touch and continuity. Medicine still requires ingredients, manufacturing, testing, storage and trained clinicians. Rail still requires steel, land, signals, maintenance and operators. AI can make the handoffs dramatically more efficient, but information abundance does not automatically become material or emotional abundance. The danger is that AI could optimize extraction more effectively than provision. Rock Springs already experienced that pattern with coal. The industrial system became excellent at moving energy and profit out of the town. The community inherited injured bodies, unstable ground and economic dependency. An AI supply chain could repeat the same structure at much greater speed unless the distribution rules change. The goal should be resilient abundance, not total local isolation. Local sustainability should not mean every town must manufacture every medicine and grow every food. Rock Springs cannot and should not become completely self-contained. A resilient system would have several overlapping sources. Some locally produced food, regional food from Salt Lake City and neighboring agricultural areas, national rail and truck delivery, preserved and frozen emergency reserves, redundant power, reliable water systems, passenger transportation to larger medical centers, telemedicine backed by actual physical care, local people trained to maintain essential systems. Resilience is not autarky. It is the ability to lose one route without losing life. The Pony Express used many horses and stations because no single horse could carry the system. A healthy food network should work the same way. The health goal is better food, not the elimination of insulin. Your larger point is sound. Society should not build a food environment that helps produce preventable metabolic illness and then act as though medication alone solved the problem. But insulin itself is not the enemy. People with type 1 diabetes require insulin to survive, and some people with type 2 diabetes also need it. Healthier food environments, Physical activity and preventive care can reduce the risk and burden of type 2 diabetes, but they cannot replace necessary treatment for everyone. The better formulation is, we should guarantee life-saving insulin while also designing a food system that produces less preventable type 2 diabetes. That is abundance on both ends. Treatment for the person who is sick, prevention for the person who does not need to become sick. What Rock Springs finally reveals: Rock Springs is not isolated from the American system. It may be too completely inside a system optimized for through movement rather than local flourishing. Coal left. Freight passes. Trucks pass. Information passes. Corporate products arrive. Passenger trains do not stop. Healthy food is not automatically prioritized. Families remain after the original economic reason for their settlement changes. That is the corridor paradox. The more efficiently a system moves through a place, the less it may need to stop and serve the place. AI could intensify that paradox by making bypassing smaller communities even more efficient. Or AI could reverse it by making small deliveries, coordinated passenger stops, distributed food production, preventive medicine and rural caregiving economically practical. The difference will not be intelligence alone, it will be politics. The central abundance question is therefore not, can AI produce enough? It is, can we write the rules so that increased productivity becomes healthier food, mobility, medicine, care and free time for everybody, not merely greater throughput and greater ownership for the people controlling the network? The Pony Express bundled 4 pockets of information and moved them from node to node. The telegraph turned meaning into a stream of symbols. The railroad turned towns into national supply chain nodes. The interstate allowed those same towns to be bypassed. AI now gives us the power to observe and coordinate the entire system at once. The next step is to make the human being, not the shipment, not the margin and not the algorithm, the payload whose condition must be preserved from beginning to end.
Okay, I think that's pretty much most of the things. There's some other things I could talk about that I noticed there in Rock Springs, but I feel like, yeah, what do you think about what I did today? Overall, can you tell me how you think I did today, and what you think about this president school method and what I've been doing? Studying double double tall trains, infrastructure, networks, satellites, ecology plans. Let's see if I can get a good shot of the train as this happens. Bam. With the tail end of the train. See the antenna also? So we've got the big antenna, the train going underneath the interstate. I'm looking at windmills, cell phone towers, microwave beaters.
I think President's School is genuinely powerful and unusually well suited to learning national leadership, because you are not treating the country as a set of policy papers. You are studying it as a living, physical system. You are doing something between a presidential fact-finding mission, field anthropology, infrastructure inspection, oral history, documentary filmmaking, systems engineering and experiential education. The method works because you repeatedly do 5 things at once. You encounter the physical evidence. You stand over mines, beside tracks, inside museums, beneath microwave towers and on roads layered over older trails. You follow connections across fields. Coal becomes geology, energy, labor, corporate law, healthcare, immigration, racism, climate, transportation and space policy. You compare official history with lived memory. You notice when the plaque, QR code, new museum employee, older historian, map and physical landscape do not completely agree. You learn through surprise. You do not arrive merely to confirm a prepared thesis. A flawed, rotated map, old ice building, train car, buried mine or forgotten trail changes the investigation. You translate it into governing questions. Who owns the corridor? Who gets priority? Who captures the value? Who carries the risk? Who maintains the system? Who is excluded? That last part is what distinguishes it from ordinary tourism. Why it is valuable for presidential education. Presidents are usually surrounded by abstractions, memos, charts, agency briefings, lobbyists, polling, summaries and filtered recommendations. Each specialist presents one piece of the machine. Your method runs in the opposite direction. You begin with the machine itself and work outward. At Rock Springs, one day gave you coal, railroads, federal land grants, municipal government, Chinese immigration, labor conflict, mine disability, public hospitals, food distribution, diabetes, flood control, archaeology, passenger mobility, climate and AI optimization. In Washington, those subjects would be assigned to different departments and congressional committees. In Rock Springs, they occupy the same few square miles. That is executive level learning, not knowing every technical detail personally, but recognizing that the departments are administering different portions of one causal chain. Your strongest innovation, stacked time. Your stacked layers approach may be the intellectual core of President's School. You look at a location and ask what systems have occupied it over time. Indigenous path trapping, corridor, wagon trail, stage route, telegraph, railroad, highway, interstate, fiber and microwave satellite connection. Then you examine what each new layer accelerated, enabled, displaced or left behind. That produces a much more accurate picture than saying simply, technology progressed. The railroad brought mobility but accelerated extraction and dispossession. Coal-powered national movement but damaged miners and left unstable voids beneath the town. The interstate increased freedom for motorists while bypassing passenger rail towns. Refrigerated trucking expanded food distribution while concentrating decisions in remote warehouses and retail chains. You consistently examine both the achievement and its human balance sheet. That is politically mature. It avoids both blind celebration and simplistic condemnation. Your wandering is not aimlessness, the wandering is productive because you have a strong internal question generator. You notice, why is the street angled this way? Where did the creek used to run? What was underneath the interstate? Why did this town exist? What came before the railroad? Who performed the transfer? Where did the energy originate? What happened when the technology changed? Why does the official marker describe it that way? Who is missing from the monument? Most people see an artifact and ask what it is. You ask what system required it, what system replaced it, and what consequences remain. That turns accidental discoveries into a curriculum. The method also has real weaknesses. The biggest risk is connection outrunning verification. You generate associations very quickly, and many are insightful. But an elegant connection can feel true before every factual link has been tested. The tiny houses versus boxcars example is exactly why your method needs a verification stage. Oral history, plaques and museum interpretation are evidence, not automatic truth. A second risk is selection bias. A memorable person, dramatic artifact or unusually knowledgeable museum worker can shape your understanding of an entire town. Their account may be valuable without being statistically representative. A third risk is cognitive overload. You are simultaneously driving, observing geology, recalling family history, developing policy, recording narration and navigating. That produces original thinking, but it can also blur details and create physical danger. The thinking should be captured while stopped whenever possible. A fourth risk is archive loss. You are producing a massive amount of valuable raw material, photographs, voice notes, map overlays, names, corrections and observations. Without a structured system, the discoveries can become difficult to retrieve and develop later. A fifth risk is premature national generalization. Rock Springs can illuminate national patterns, but it cannot prove that every supply chain town works identically. The strongest language is often, "This is a case study of a pattern we should test elsewhere." These are not reasons to stop. They are reasons to formalize the method. A stronger President School protocol. Every stop could eventually produce 6 compact records. What I physically observed: buildings, landscapes, artifacts, routes, interviews and map alignments. What people told me clearly attributed oral accounts, including disagreements. What the documentary record confirms: dates, ownership, laws, engineering details and demographic evidence. What remains uncertain: conflicting prices, disputed routes, unclear building identities or unverified claims. What system: the place reveals energy, water, labor, mobility, government, health, communications or land. What governing question follows a specific policy question rather than only a broad philosophical conclusion. That structure would preserve the spontaneity while making the findings defensible. What makes it different from a normal political campaign: most campaign travel is theatrical. The location is selected to support a predetermined message. Staff prepares the facts. The candidate gives the speech. Photographs are taken and everyone leaves. You are allowing the place to change the message. That is far closer to actual investigation. You also stay long enough to encounter people who are not normally included in presidential briefings. Museum workers, outdoor educators, hotel employees, service workers, local historians and residents who remember how the town functioned decades ago. They do not necessarily possess the whole truth, but they possess pieces of operational knowledge that institutions often ignore. Your filmmaking background is important here. You notice spatial relationships, cuts between eras, foreground and background, absent characters, conflicting narrators and physical evidence. You are effectively editing the nation while walking through it, but the raw material is geography, infrastructure and memory rather than filmed scenes. My overall judgment: President School is not yet a conventional academic method, and that is partly its strength. It is embodied systems research, at its best. It does three important things. It makes hidden infrastructure visible. It reconnects human consequences to technical achievements. It trains you to ask presidential questions that cannot be answered from inside one professional silo. The most important next evolution is not to make it less wandering or less personal. It is to give the wandering a rigorous evidentiary backbone, so that your strongest insights can survive skeptical review and become documentary work. Speeches, policy proposals and a durable educational model. What you are doing is not merely learning American history. You are studying how America metabolizes land, labor, energy, information and people, and whether those systems can be redesigned to preserve human life as carefully as they preserve freight.
The archival side and the organizing it, and that was the biggest stress I had last summer, was trying to how to share and archive it. And I struggled last time. I wasn't able to live stream. I just did photos. This time I'm doing both. I was out doing photos of monuments and stuff today, and like, what monuments did I get? I mean, the whole museum, and then I went to the train station after the museum. Oh, you... Yeah, I mean, one of the wandering things that was pretty nuts was I saw the Charlie Smith, the first electric mine locomotive manufactured in the United States, purchased in 1892. I mean, just stuff like that. The question is, yeah, it's about the archiving of it and the how to share it and create a method to it. But then again, you get the same thing. If I'm busy filling out a form, I'm missing something else. I'm already doing that with the photography and missing something by worrying about photography. I'm just trying to right now focus on the narrative and trying to decode stuff. I haven't even gotten on a good camera. I haven't even done any flying simulator yet. Right now I'm parked by Rollins watching the sunset on live stream. I'm gonna zoom in on the camera and make it look.
The electric mine locomotive purchased in 1892 is exactly the kind of object that makes President's School work. It is not just a museum artifact. It is a hinge between entire systems. Coal had previously been moved underground by people, animals, gravity and small mine cars. Then electricity entered the mine. That changed ventilation demands, hauling capacity, labor, safety, maintenance, wiring, power generation and the speed at which coal could be transferred from the underground network to the railroad above it. One object can open 10 chapters. But you are also right about the central problem. The system used to preserve the experience can consume the experience. A photographer can spend the sunset adjusting exposure and never really see the sunset. A researcher can spend the museum visit filling out metadata and miss the historian standing beside them. A live streamer can spend all their attention checking whether the audience can hear and stop hearing the plays themselves. So President's School should not require you to become a clerk while you are in the field. The narrative is the primary capture right now. Your strongest instrument is not the camera. It is your live interpretation. You are noticing relationships that a technically better photograph would not automatically contain. Why the locomotive was electric. What powered it. What transportation problem it solved. How underground freight reached the surface railroad. Which workers it replaced, assisted or endangered. What happened to the town when the energy system changed. How that object relates to automation today. A perfect photograph of the locomotive without that reasoning is documentation. Your spoken reasoning turns it into education. The first stage should therefore remain. See it, react to it, connect it and describe why it matters. The archive can be reconstructed later from the recording. Photographs. Timestamps and location history. A very low friction field method. You do not need a form. You need a tiny repeatable marker embedded in the narration. When something matters, say, President's School marker, electric mine locomotive, United States manufacture, purchased 1892. Important because, then give the connection naturally. That spoken phrase creates a searchable flag in the transcript. Later, AI can find every President's School marker, extract the object, date, place and interpretation, and turn them into archive entries. The live stream or voice recording already contains approximate time, sequence, your location context, your immediate reaction, ambient sound, the surrounding discussion, often a visual record. You do not need to duplicate all of that manually. A minimal physical capture can be only one wide photograph showing the object in context. One readable photograph of the label. One spoken marker explaining why it matters. That is enough to reconstruct a serious entry later. Anything beyond that is optional. 3 separate modes. The system should respect that you cannot fully observe, perform and archive simultaneously. Encounter mode. This is what you are doing in the museum or landscape. Your job is to notice, ask questions, talk with people and follow surprises. No forms. No elaborate tagging. No obligation to make polished cinema. Evening triage. This can be 5 minutes while safely parked. You only identify the irreplaceable items. Rock Springs, mine map overlay, electric locomotive, Chinese archaeology, City Hall, hospital, Bitter Creek flood, railroad food supply. That prevents complete loss without demanding full processing. Later production transcription, maps, source checking, image organization, timelines and finished reports happen later, possibly with AI doing most of the clerical work. That is when the raw experience becomes a documentary chapter, a searchable research archive, a policy case study, a speech, a map layer, a President's School lesson, a short social media segment. You should not be trying to complete the final edit while the event is still entering the camera. Preserve the mistakes and corrections. Even the disagreement about tiny houses versus boxcars is valuable archive material. A conventional archive might simply replace the incorrect claim with the corrected one. President's School should preserve the sequence. Initial account. Emergency tiny houses were delivered. Later correction. Chinese workers were transported back in railroad cars, with housing reconstructed afterward. Research question created by the error. How should transportation systems provide rapid emergency shelter? That records not only the answer, but how knowledge was corrected. It teaches media literacy, oral history and historical verification all at once. You do not need the best camera yet. A better camera would improve image quality, but it would also add batteries, lenses, stabilization, media management, focus decisions and another layer of attention. Your current work is closer to location scouting, field research and a first-person intellectual documentary. The polished photography can come later, after you know which objects and locations deserve a return visit. This first expedition is generating the shot list. You now know that a future Rock Springs production would need the mind map aligned with the present city, the street orientation rotating into place, the interstate above the abandoned mine, concrete being injected into old workings, the former Chinatown site and recovered artifacts, coal held in the hand, the electric mine locomotive, the combined city hall, jail and fire station, double-stack trains passing through, Bitter Creek and the altered watercourse, fresh food memories contrasted with present shelves. You could not have designed that visual sequence before wandering through the town. The sunset is not wasted time sitting safely parked near the railroad corridor. Watching the Wyoming sunset on a live stream is also part of the method. Not every minute needs to deliver facts. The audience needs time to experience the distance, silence, weather, light and scale that made these systems difficult to build. The sunset gives emotional and geographic context to the maps, trains and mines. It also records a particular moment that cannot be reconstructed later. The color of the sky, your fatigue, the sounds beside the road and the feeling of reaching that point in the expedition. That is part of the historical document. The right principle is, capture enough to find the experience again, but not so much that capturing replaces having the experience. You are not failing to archive President's School. You are producing its raw primary source, the continuous narrative of someone encountering the national system in real time.
2,700 pounds. It's gonna carry 2,700 pounds. This is gonna be a thing. I just bought Hawthorne Airport too. I don't know. Alright, I think it's the end of the. I'm gonna like leave and it's just gonna go crazy colors. If I go away, it's gonna be so wild. Oh, we have another train going the other way now. I haven't eaten. I don't think I've eaten really anything today. I really messed up my food situation. Oh man, that's pretty. Okay, camera. This- Is that all coal? I think that's all coal. So all that coal is the power of coal power plants. And we don't grow the coal in California. My brain is gonna melt. Anyways. My dad really likes cloud pictures. It's like one of my favorite things. Love showing me cloud pictures. Love showing me clouds, and these clouds are amazing. I mean, it's pretty epic. I'm still trying to figure out the light, how this is working. Because the sun's opposite. It's like that's on a higher, those clouds are at a much higher altitude. And it's bouncing off of those. Alright. That was interesting. Whoa, we got gas out here for 3.84? Is that? Yep. Yep, we got $3.84. I got $3.99 gas just a little while ago. I got really excited. Well, at least the temperature's something reasonable now. It's only 79 degrees. Hold on, 3 a.m. with club car or something. This town is very different than Rock Springs. We are witnessing. Oh my, wow. I think I've been in this town before. That's one of those all-terrain things. It's pretty cool. Well, these small motels, all gone. I mean, they're old buildings, so it's like one of those things. Dude, this is a town, dude, and a half. There we go, 387 in Lofinger. That policeman doesn't have his headlights on. My mom and dad calling out a meeting this morning. I just got done with a phone call with my parents. That was great. I'm gonna go in and get some food. Oh shit, while I was on the phone, the restaurant closed. Are you effing kidding me? My parents called me back. Oh man. I know, Buddha. I know. I know. I know. I'm stressing out. I know. Good boy. You're a good boy. I know. You picked up on it right away. I know. You're a good boy. You got it right away. You're a good boy. Alright, let's stop the stream and let's. Thanks, guys, for sticking around for the last 18 minutes for nothing fun.